What if the next time in a relationship where we had a disagreement or some type of conflict, what if instead of trying to figure out who's right and who's wrong, what if we saw that as an opportunity to form a deeper connection with each other? Did you know that the quality of your life will be determined by the quality of your relationships? Susan Scott, in her book, Fierce Conversation, said that the conversation that you're avoiding, that one conversation you're avoiding, may be the very conversation that you actually need to have. And yet sometimes it can feel like a Grand Canyon size gap of the conversation we know we need to have. And right now, our knowing of how to navigate that. And so today's episode, the goal is that I share 6 things that I've discovered as I've leaned into conflict resolution in my own life, in my own family. There's 6 things I've discovered that have been helpful for me. This is not an episode that's going to wave a magic wand and all of a sudden all of your relational challenges are solved with one conversation. But I do believe these 6 key things that I've identified through the help of many others that have been so helpful to me, I trust at least one of them will be helpful to you, if not all 6 of them. And I was having a conversation earlier with a mentor of mine, and he's going to be on next week's episode. And I've had him on before, David Higginbotham. And he reminded me today in our conversation that oftentimes when it comes to people actually changing behavior, number one, us human beings, we're complicated creatures, right? Under the best of circumstances, all of us have our quirks, our challenges, and personality differences, and all those types of things. And I was reminded by this conversation with David that instead of focusing on taking a big step, if we could just focus on making a micro adjustment where we're getting 1% better, that could be a step headed in the right direction. Because oftentimes a change direction, it's not doing a 180 change. It's taking one thing and taking action on it and getting 1% better. So maybe today's episode will help you just get that 1% better this time around. And so here, I wrote down a few questions in my notes. I want to lead with this one. I want you to think back to your childhood, your upbringing. All of us have different experiences. And I want you to ponder on this question. I wrote it out this way. How did watching conflict during your childhood influence how you handle conflict now as an adult? The second question I wrote out is what conflict growing up? I remember there was, from my perspective, a lot of conflict. It was challenging, right? Being honest with you, that oftentimes conflict, it was around when money was tight or where there was no money. The situation often would be that there would be verbal arguments that would lead to physical things happening between my mom and my stepdads. And oftentimes the stepdad would go off in a handcuff. So when I think of conflict, I can't help but go back to my childhood. And it was pretty intense, honestly. And yet for each one of us, it probably looks different. Here's what I know to be true, though, is generally speaking, it's not too uncommon that how we learn to process and navigate conflict, whether it was directly or indirectly, a lot of times as adults, we could simply repeat what we were exposed to. And I remember a long time as I was a kid, I was listening to things happening in the other room, and I would have been about going into my freshman year of high school. And I just made a decision. I thought to myself, that's not what I ever want a relationship with my spouse to look like. And I made a decision there as a teenage boy to never do certain things when it comes to handling conflict. And yet, maybe when you think back to your childhood and when you were exposed conflict and how you saw it navigated, maybe you don't desire to make a 1% change. Maybe you do desire to completely make a course correction and go 180 degrees, just like I did. I just want to let you know I get it. I understand that. And yet be patient with yourself. Significant change doesn't happen overnight, unfortunately, but we can make progress daily over time. And so maybe what you observed was not that healthy, and you know for sure you would not want to repeat that pattern. And so maybe for some of you out there listening, like me, there's an opportunity to change how things have been done in certain relationships in your family. Maybe you're going to be the difference maker where you change how conflict is managed in your family tree and impact future generations. So what if conflict was a catalyst for positive change in your life? So we're going to talk about today the 6 things I wrote out that have been helpful for me to think on and to take action on in order to change conflict into a connection. The first one is this. Number one, I would say lean in to the discomfort of the conversation that needs to happen. Because here's what I know to be true is most of us will, when it comes to conflict, will avoid it at all costs, meaning it's so uncomfortable. I don't want to go there. I don't want to learn how to navigate it. So I just want to bury my head in the sand, turn the other direction, run the other direction, and act like it doesn't exist. Well, that's obviously not going to be a way to resolve anything, right? Because unfortunately in life, we can't just bury things underneath the rug and move on and act like everything's okay. That's just not how it works. That's not healthy. And remember, in today's conversation, we're focused on having healthy relationships because the quality of our life will be determined by the quality of our relationships. And we want healthy, thriving relationships. So, number one, I would say be the leader in your family and decide that you're going to embrace discomfort and take the initiative to say, we need to sit down and talk. I find that sometimes having a period of time to think about things, I have a better chance to set everybody up for success if I just don't off the cuff react. Reacting is different than responding, right? Reacting is I think about my emotions and how I feel in the moment. And then I say what comes to mind because I'm somewhat a verbal processor. I have thoughts and I could spit them out relatively quickly. And there's been times where that works for me, and then other times where that works against me. And so if we could have a little bit of a buffer period of time, meaning that we give some time to all parties to think things through, I find that to be helpful. There's a difference between reacting and responding. Responding, I think about is more I've processed it. I have some goals in mind and I have a little bit of a strategy and I know a general direction to head. And most importantly, I'm a little bit more out of my emotions. My emotions have settled down and now I'm ready to sit down and have a conversation. I think it's important also that we define the goal. Here's what's not going to be helpful when it comes to resolving conflict. By the way, it's funny to look back over the years, and my language would be God set me up for success, meaning when I was in fifth grade, I was going to school in Seattle, Washington. And I remember I was out on the playground. Mr. Spinney was my fifth grade teacher in Seattle. And I got selected somehow, probably because I was fidgety and high energy in class. And I thought most teachers were boring. And I didn't really want to listen to them. And quite frankly, I feel that way today about a lot of people. I just won't listen to them because I think they're boring when it comes to teachers. I'll go find someone that connects with me and how they communicate resonates with me, I guess. And so fifth grade, Seattle, I get selected to be what's called a peer mediator. Here's what that means is I get an orange vest, I get a whistle around my neck, and I get to go to the additional recess. That's how they won me over and got a yes for me on this one when I was in about fifth grade, is they said I get to go outside on a recess that I was not supposed to be out on the playground at. But I didn't get to play. Here, I actually had a job, right? I had the whistle, I had the orange vest, and my job was this: to stand back and watch all the kids playing on the playground. And if I saw excuse me, a scuffle between people or things were getting heated, a pushing match started or people started arguing, I would blow the whistle. I would go over to them. I would have them face each other and take a few steps back. And then I would help them talk through it, with the goal being that they would shake hands, part ways, and get back to recess and have a good time. And I think back to myself, it's incredible that I feel like my entire life that type of thinking has served me well. I see an issue, I blow my whistle internally and say, hey, something's not right here in this relationship. I'm going to go over with caution and separate the individuals and have the goal of reconciliation to work things out as much as possible. There's a Bible verse that says, do everything within your power to live at peace. Oh, here it is. Live at peace with as many as you can, as much as it depends on you. That's Chris's paraphrase version or extended version. The important part is to do what I can to live at peace with people. That's really the goal here. So with here's what's not helpful in resolving conflict or disagreements in relationships with others. Trying to play out the entire conversation in your mind, trying to figure out how things are going to go in advance, and actually thinking that when you sit down with that person or that group of people, it's going to actually go that way. Newsflash, it never goes that way about 100% of the time. So I would encourage you to let go of trying to figure out everything that you're going to say, everything they're going to say in advance in your mind, because I promise you, it is not going to go to that way. And it's probably going to be a waste of time. It is important to think through what the goal of the conversation is. In fact, in a family situation a few weeks ago, I had the opportunity to pull family members, some family into our home and sit down and have a conversation. And I like to lead with reassuring that person, because I think it's awkward for all of us to reassure them, like, I care about you, we love you, that's why you're here, we value you and your relationship. And I like to lead with having a goal. And the goal I shared this time, I'll share with you because I think it's important. I find it helpful. The goal is simply this: I value you. I care about you. I would like to hear your perspective. Please share and just open it up, where my goal in the conversation, as challenging as it may be, is to simply listen to them. Listen to them. I like one liners, and I think about seek first to understand and then be understood. So emphasis on seeking to understand them and their perspective. That's the one goal that I like to have in the conversation to work through something. And I wrote these out as questions. I want to hear their perspective. And then I wrote a note for myself that says this: I want to hear their perspective and do my best to not get defensive. That's key. Don't get defensive. Number two, ask myself this: what's a small step that I can take to let them know I am hearing them? The third one is this: what's the one thing that I need them to understand? These are important things to think through prior to the conversation. So you have a little bit of a strategy and you think a little bit proactively going into the conversation. It sets you and them up for success. Here's something I like to think about as well: what assumptions have I been making? Because the fascinating thing about perspective is it reminds me of a beach ball, where if I had a beach ball, it usually has several different colors on it. And if I'm looking at a side of the beach ball, and one side is white, red, and yellow, and they're looking at the other side, and we're holding the same beach ball. Imagine this with me. And they see white, blue, and green. They tell me what they see. I tell them what I see. There's a temptation just to go back and forth and argue about what I see versus what they see or how they saw it. All of that is probably going to be a waste of time from my experience. We're better off not just arguing about who's right or who's wrong, because emotions are going to get high and it's probably just not going to be a productive conversation, especially if any period of time has passed. Sometimes, I don't know about you, but for me, it's a challenge to even remember accurately what happened yesterday or last weekend for that matter, let alone something that happened a few days ago, a week or two ago, or maybe even a few months ago. The chances of anybody remembering accurately what happened, probably not so much. So remind myself that I'm there to listen, try to figure out, have the attitude of learning, like, okay, help me understand things from your perspective, having that type of mindset. And I do like to think about, like, what's one thing that I want them to walk away to understand? I find that helpful to think through. The fourth thing that I wrote down is about assumptions. What am I assuming? We all have heard what assuming means, right? So I don't need to go there. But what assumptions have I been making? The next one is, how can I express gratitude for the opportunity to be talking to them right now? It's kind of, I've heard it put before as like an Oreo sandwich, where you lead with affirmation, approval, sharing how much you appreciate them, how much you love them. Then you talk about the challenge. And then at the end, you reassure them how much you love them and appreciate them. It's like the Oreo sandwich, right? The point is that expressing gratitude for them, I find to be helpful. Number one, to remind myself how much I do appreciate them, because we're all emotional beings, some more than other, right? So when I find myself expressing gratitude, it's reminding myself to find the good in them, the things I value and appreciate. And I like to lead with that. I like to close with it, and then have the other stuff in the middle. So express gratitude for the opportunity to be talking with them right now. The last thing I wrote down is this: is there a part of me that, if I'm being honest, is still being defensive, trying to get my point across because I think I'm right and I want to win? As much as you may desire to be right, and even if you were right, Sometimes it's about always best to file that to the side in order to protect the relationship and try to figure out how to move forward. There's a seventh item that I want to share with you that I found helpful. It was last year I started to develop a list of 4 or 5 people that I started to carry offenses from. Just a little thing here, a little thing there. Nothing real major per se, but just things that I started to carry around in my heart on the inside of me that I found myself thinking about often when I imagine the people that I was offended by. And a mentor of mine encouraged me and challenged me to do this. Chris, write out the name of that person and then write out specifically everything that you could think of that they did or said that offended you, that got underneath your skin or rubbed you the wrong way. Actually, write it out. Maybe that's something that would be helpful for you. Write out the individual's name and then write out everything that you could think of and what they did. And you may come to some conclusions as you go through that exercise because I found it helpful for a few reasons. Number one, taking the time to actually think it out and get it out of my head and write it out with a pen on paper. That was a whole process itself, an experience. And then as I started to look at their name and their wrongdoings, I came to some conclusions that were helpful for me that led me to ultimately let that go. A friend of mine reminded me last week, he said, Chris, the thing about unforgiveness or not letting go, because it sounds like it'd be so easy, doesn't it? But sometimes it's not. Oftentimes it's not. He referred to it like this. Chris, imagine a prisoner in a prison cell and you go over and you unlock the door and they're open, but they just choose to sit there and they're sitting in the prison cell. When the prison cell has been unlocked, they're free to go. They're free to experience freedom. And yet they're sitting there and on the inside, they feel like a prisoner. He said, Chris, that's what happens with bitterness, unresolved conflict and issues with people. What we do is we hold on to it and we become that person in the prison sitting there that even though the prison door is unlocked, we've been set free. We're choosing to be a prisoner because we're holding on to that unresolved conflict. And the thing is that person usually is unaware of it. They're going on to live their best life. And in the meantime, it's robbing me of all the peace and joy and energy required to build the life that I desire for my family and I, because I'm all bound up on the inside, hanging on past offenses. I would encourage you to embrace and to go on the journey that I've been going on really my entire life to learn to let go of offenses. Choose to forgive, to let go and move on, not so they can necessarily move on, but so you can move on, so you can experience freedom and everything that God has for you. And so as we started, we'll end today that remember the quality of your life will be determined by the quality of relationships. And you have the opportunity because at the essence of every relationship is conflict. Some bring more conflict than others, but number one, making the decision that you're going to be an initiator, that you're going to lead the way, maybe for you and your household and your family, to be a peacemaker, to work through things, to build bridges instead of build walls. I invite you to continue on that journey. And the quality of your life will be determined by the quality of your relationships. And I wonder what's that one conversation that you already know that you need to have, because I wonder perhaps it's the one that you need to have the most. We'll see you.